I'm Sarah Mitchell, 32, stepping into the family party at the Waldorf Astoria, New York. My pulse racing. My sister, her smile sharp, shoves a bucket and rag into my hands. "You're just a toilet cleaner now," she hisses, pushing me toward the restroom as guests smirk. I clench my jaw, forcing a smile. Suddenly, a Pentagon official, posture rigid, strides through the crowd. "It's an honor to meet you, Senior Agent Ma'am," she declares, voice cutting like a blade. The room freezes. My sister's face pales, the bucket slipping from her grip, clattering to the floor. Ever been humiliated by your own family? Smash that subscribe button and share your story in the comments. Let's talk about rising above. 8 years ago, at 24, I walked away from Mitchell Defense Solutions, the family empire built on Pentagon contracts and ruthless ambition. My mom, Catherine, had spent my childhood grooming me to take the helm, her voice sharp, with plans for me to secure billion-dollar deals. "You're our future," she'd say, her gaze cutting like a knife. My dad, Robert, offered rare nods of approval, each one a treasure I'd fought for. My sister Jennifer, 3 years older, hovered in the shadows, ready to steal my spot. But their world of boardrooms and power games wasn't mine. I wanted to serve my country, not their profits. So I applied to the Defense Intelligence Agency, choosing a path of purpose over their penthouse. The day I told them, I stood in our family's sleek Manhattan living room, heart pounding but voice steady. "I'm joining DIA," I declared. Mom's face twisted into a scowl. "You're tossing our legacy for a government job," she hissed, her words like venom. Dad turned to the window, his silence heavier than her anger. Jennifer leaned against the wall, a smug grin spreading. "She's not built for this, Mom. Let her go." That moment severed us. They cut me off, no calls, no letters, no trace of the daughter they'd raised. I was alone, but I was free. At DIA, I built a new life from scratch. Starting as a junior analyst, I spent nights decoding encrypted files, my eyes burning from the screen. By 28, I was leading cybersecurity audits, spotting flaws that could cripple defense systems. Now at 32, I'm a senior agent trusted with missions that save lives. Every cracked code, every exposed breach buried the sting of that day. Mom's scorn, Dad's silence, Jennifer's smirk. They haunted me, but I channeled the pain into my work. I wasn't just good, I was relentless. Last week, my boss, Colonel Hayes, called me into his office at DIA headquarters, his voice gruff as gravel cut through the hum of phones. "Mitchell Defense Solutions is bidding on a $2 billion Pentagon contract. Their system's got red flags, glitches, maybe worse. You're our best auditor. Get in there and dig up the truth." I nodded, my chest tightening. This wasn't just a job. It was my family's company. I knew what I'd face: Mom's manipulative charm, Dad's cold distance, Jennifer's gloating as the heir apparent. But this wasn't about them. Lives hung on a secure system, and I wouldn't let personal history cloud my duty. The night before the party, I sat in my hotel room, laptop open to the company's filings. The documents were a mess. Vague budgets, rushed deadlines, subcontractors with murky records. My instincts screamed trouble, the kind that could tank a contract or endanger national security. I flashed back to my first big DIA case, auditing a contractor in Virginia. I'd found a hidden backdoor in their code left by a sloppy programmer. It took 3 sleepless days, but I saved a $500 million deal from collapse. This felt bigger, uglier. If Mitchell Defense Solutions was cutting corners, I'd expose it no matter the cost. Mom's face flashed in my mind, her relentless drive, her vision of me as her puppet, not a person with my own dreams. Dad's fleeting smiles, always for Jennifer's triumphs, never mine. Jennifer, the golden child, basking in their favor while I scrapped for crumbs. They'd made their choice 8 years ago, and I'd made mine. Returning to their world now, I felt the weight of those years, not as anger, but as clarity. I wasn't here to fix old wounds or win their approval. I was here to do my job. My phone buzzed with a DIA alert: the Pentagon needed answers by Monday. 2 days to audit the system, uncover any flaws, and report back. I knew Mom would try to pull me back into her plans, Dad would ignore me, and Jennifer would flaunt her power. But they couldn't sway me. I'd faced tougher challenges: encrypted networks, hostile contractors, high-stakes deadlines. This was just another mission. I shut my laptop, my resolve like iron. Mitchell Defense Solutions wasn't just a family business, it was a potential threat to national security. If their system was compromised, I'd find it. If they were hiding something, I'd drag it into the light. I was a DIA senior agent here to protect my country, not their legacy. I walked into the Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom, my heels clicking against the polished floor, my DIA badge tucked away in my purse. The chatter of elite guests, defense contractors, politicians, and old money filled the air. My dad Robert stood near the bar, his suit crisp, his face a mask of authority. He caught my eye, then looked away as if I were a stranger. "Sarah, grab a tray," he said, voice flat, pointing to a stack of drink trays. I bit back a retort, picked up a tray, and started weaving through the crowd, balancing champagne flutes while dodging judgmental glances. My mom, Catherine, hovered near the stage, her elegant dress screaming power. She beckoned me over, her smile tight. "Clean up those spilled glasses," she whispered, nodding toward a table littered with empty flutes. "Don't embarrass us." I nodded. My jaw clenched and grabbed a rag, wiping down the table as guests whispered behind their hands. I wasn't their daughter tonight, just hired help. My sister Jennifer took the stage, her voice smooth as she addressed the room. "Mitchell Defense Solutions is proud to lead the future of national security," she declared, her smile radiant. "Our system will secure a $2 billion Pentagon contract, setting a new standard." The crowd clapped, impressed by her confidence. A contractor in a sharp suit raised his glass. "Jennifer, how's the system handling real-time threats?" he asked. Jennifer's smile faltered, her eyes darting to Dad. "It's cutting edge," she said, voice vague. "We're finalizing details." I paused, rag in hand, noting her dodge. Another guest pressed, "What about encryption protocols?" Jennifer laughed too loud. "All under control," she said, pivoting to a toast. I narrowed my eyes. She was hiding something. As I carried a tray of drinks, Mom pulled me aside, her grip tight on my arm. "You're making a fool of yourself, Sarah," she hissed loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Chasing childish dreams while Jennifer carries our legacy. You're nothing but a disappointment." Her words stung, but I kept my face neutral, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. "Just doing what you asked, Mom," I said, voice steady, and walked away, tray in hand. Guests murmured, their pitying looks cutting deeper than her words. I moved to the edge of the room, pretending to adjust a tablecloth, but my mind was racing. Jennifer's evasiveness wasn't just nerves, she was covering something up. I'd audited enough contractors to recognize the signs: rushed answers, vague promises, a sheen of sweat on her brow. Mitchell Defense Solutions was pitching a system they couldn't back up, and I was here to find out why. I caught Dad's eye across the room. He turned away again, his dismissal sharper than any insult. Jennifer, still on stage, basked in applause, but her glances toward Dad screamed insecurity. A waiter bumped into me, spilling wine on my dress. "Sorry, miss," he muttered, but Mom was already there, her voice sharp. "Sarah, clean it up. Don't stand there looking useless." I grabbed a napkin, dabbing at the stain, my cheeks burning as guests watched. I wasn't just invisible to my family, I was a prop, a reminder of their control. But I wasn't here to play their game. I was here to do my job, and Jennifer's dodgy answers were my first clue. I slipped to a quiet corner, setting down the tray. A guest, an older man in a military uniform, approached. "You're with Mitchell Defense?" he asked, eyeing my stained dress. I shook my head, keeping my voice low. "Just helping out." He nodded, unaware of my real role. I watched Jennifer work the crowd, her charm masking her unease. She avoided another technical question, redirecting with a joke. My gut twisted. The system was flawed, and she knew it. This wasn't just a family party, it was a stage for their lies, and I was the only one looking for the truth. As the night wore on, I kept moving, serving drinks, clearing tables, all while listening. Every dodged question, every nervous glance from Jennifer added to my suspicions. Mom's public jab echoed in my head, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about their approval. It was about the mission. If Mitchell Defense Solutions was cutting corners, I'd find the evidence no matter how much they tried to bury me in their shame. The ballroom buzzed with chatter glasses clinking as I stood in the shadows, a tray of empty flutes in my hands. Jennifer was still on stage, her voice smooth, deflecting another technical question with a polished smile. I scanned the crowd, my pulse steady despite the wine stain on my dress. Then the air shifted. A woman in a sharp navy suit cut through the guests, her presence commanding silence. Elizabeth Warner, Pentagon official, strode forward, her eyes locking onto me. I set the tray down, straightening as she approached. Agent Mitchell Warner, said, her voice clear and authoritative, slicing through the room's hum. It's an honor to meet the senior agent overseeing our contract audit. The crowd froze. Gasps rippled around me. Jennifer's smile vanished, her microphone trembling in her hand. Dad's head snapped up from the bar, his eyes wide. Mom's champagne flute tilted, nearly spilling as she stared, mouth agape. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "The honor's mine, Ms. Warner," I replied, my voice calm but firm. Inside, my mind raced. This was it, the moment my family's facade would crack. Warner turned to the crowd, her tone unwavering. "Agent Mitchell's work ensures our national security. Her audit of Mitchell Defense Solutions will determine if their system meets Pentagon standards." The guests murmured, their eyes darting between me and Jennifer, who stood rigid on stage. Jennifer recovered fast, stepping down and rushing toward Warner, her heels clicking frantically. "Ms. Warner, I'm Jennifer, leading our company's efforts," she said, her voice overly bright, her hand extended. Warner shook it briefly, her gaze cool. "I'm aware of your role," Warner said, then turned back to me. "Agent Mitchell, I look forward to your findings tomorrow." Jennifer's smile twitched, her eyes flashing with panic. She glanced at Dad, who stood motionless, his face pale. Mom stepped forward, her charm kicking in. "Ms. Warner, we're so proud of our company's work," she said, her voice syrupy, ignoring me entirely. I stayed silent, observing every move. Jennifer's quick recovery screamed desperation. She was hiding something, and Warner's presence rattled her. Dad's stillness wasn't his usual dismissal. It was fear. Mom's forced smile couldn't mask her unease. I'd audited enough contractors to know the signs of a cover-up: nervous glances, overeager charm, a rush to redirect. Warner's public acknowledgement had just blown their carefully curated image apart. A guest, a gray-haired CEO, approached Warner. "So Agent Mitchell's running the audit?" he asked, eyeing me with new respect. Warner nodded. "She's one of DIA's best. Her report will decide the contract's fate." Jennifer laughed, too shrill, cutting in. "We're fully prepared, Ms. Warner. Our system's flawless." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp with warning. I met her gaze, unflinching. She wasn't fooling me. Those dodged questions from earlier weren't just nerves, they were cracks in her story. Mom pulled Warner aside, offering a tour of the company's display booth. "Let me show you our vision," she said, her arm looping through Warner's. Warner politely declined, her focus still on me. "I'm here to discuss the audit, not displays," she said, her tone clipped. Mom's face tightened, her charm faltering. Dad finally moved, approaching Warner with a forced grin. "We're thrilled to have Agent Mitchell's expertise," he said, his voice strained, avoiding my eyes. The lie was blatant. He hadn't known my role until now. I kept my composure, my hands steady as I picked up the tray again, blending back into the crowd. But my mind was sharp, cataloging every detail: Jennifer's panicked glance at Dad, Mom's desperate pivot, Dad's sudden deference. They weren't just shocked, they were scared. Mitchell Defense Solutions was hiding something big, and Warner's arrival had exposed their vulnerability. I caught Jennifer whispering to Dad, her gestures frantic. She thought she could charm her way out, but Warner wasn't here for flattery. As Warner walked away, guests swarmed me, their questions piling up. "You're with DIA," one asked. "How long have you been auditing?" another pressed. I deflected with a smile. "Just here to do my job," I said, slipping through the crowd. Jennifer watched me, her face a mix of fury and fear. She knew I was on to her, and I knew this night was only the beginning. My audit tomorrow would uncover the truth, no matter how hard they tried to bury it. I stepped into the glass-walled headquarters of Mitchell Defense Solutions in Manhattan, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, my DIA badge clipped to my jacket. The Sunday morning air was crisp, but my focus was sharper. Yesterday's party had confirmed my suspicions. Jennifer was hiding something, and I was here to uncover it. I was led to a secure server room by Thomas Reed, a technician in his late 20s, his ID badge swinging as he walked. "Agent Mitchell, this way," he said, his voice low, almost nervous. I nodded, scanning the sleek corridors, my mind on the $2 billion Pentagon contract riding on this audit. Thomas unlocked the server room, a hum of machines greeting us. "This is the core of our defense system," he said, gesturing to rows of blinking servers. I set up my laptop, pulling up the system's code. "Let's start with the encryption protocols." I said, my fingers flying over the keys. Lines of code scrolled past, and within minutes I spotted the first red flag, a weak encryption key easily exploitable. "This is amateur," I muttered. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "That's recent." Jennifer Mitchell pushed for a faster rollout. I raised an eyebrow. "Faster how?" I asked. Thomas hesitated, glancing at the door. "She cut testing phases," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Said we had to beat competitors to the Pentagon bid." I leaned back, my gut twisting. A rushed system was a vulnerable one, and vulnerabilities in a defense contract could cost lives. I dug deeper, running diagnostics. The system's firewall had gaps, leaving it open to external attacks. "This could let hackers waltz in," I said, pointing at the screen. Thomas nodded, his face pale. "I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen." As I traced the code, I found something worse, a hidden subroutine routing data to an offshore server. My pulse quickened. "Thomas, what's this?" I asked, zooming in on the code. He leaned over, his eyes widening. "That's not ours," he said, voice tight. "It's sending encrypted files to an IP in Eastern Europe." I cross-checked the logs. Millions of dollars worth of classified data had been siphoned off over months, tied to shell companies. This wasn't just a flaw. It was deliberate, illegal, and dangerous. "Jennifer approved this code?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. Thomas swallowed hard. "She signed off on every update," he said. "Told us to prioritize speed over everything else." I clenched my jaw, piecing it together. Jennifer Mitchell, desperate to secure the contract, had greenlit a system riddled with holes and tied to illicit deals. My family's company wasn't just incompetent, it was complicit. I pulled up financial records linked to the system's subcontractors. One name kept appearing, a firm called Novex Solutions, based in a tax haven. "Thomas, who hired Novex?" I asked. He shifted, avoiding my eyes. "Jennifer brought them on. Said they were cost-effective." I snorted. Cost-effective for funneling millions to offshore accounts, maybe. The records showed payments of $10 million to Novex disguised as consulting fees. My stomach churned. This was bigger than a bad system, it was a betrayal of national security. I saved screenshots of the code and logs, my hands steady despite the anger simmering inside. "Thomas, you knew about this?" I asked, my tone sharp. He shook his head quickly. "Not the offshore stuff. I just followed orders. Jennifer said it was all cleared." His voice cracked, and I believed him. He was a cog in their machine, not the mastermind. The server room door buzzed, and a security guard poked his head in. "Agent Mitchell Mins, Jennifer Mitchell wants to see you upstairs," he said. I closed my laptop, my resolve hardening. Jennifer must have heard I was here. She'd try to charm or intimidate me, but I wasn't the sister she could push around anymore. "Tell her I'll be there when I'm done," I said, my voice firm. The guard nodded and left. I turned back to Thomas. "Copy everything to this drive," I said, handing him a secure USB. "Every log, every transaction." He took it, his hands shaking. "This could ruin the company," he whispered. I met his eyes. "If it's dirty, it deserves to fall." My mission wasn't about saving Mitchell Defense Solutions, it was about protecting my country. Jennifer's reckless ambition had put lives at risk, and I was going to prove it. As Thomas copied the files, I prepared for the next step. Tomorrow's boardroom meeting would be my chance to confront Jennifer, Dad, and Mom with the evidence. They thought they could bury their secrets, but I was digging them up piece by damning piece. I stood at the head of the conference table in Mitchell Defense Solutions' sleek Manhattan boardroom, my laptop open, the USB drive from yesterday's audit in my pocket. The Monday morning meeting was packed. Elizabeth Warner sat across from me, her navy suit crisp, her gaze steady. Dad sat at the table's far end, his face unreadable, fingers drumming silently. Mom was beside him, her lips a tight line, her eyes flicking between me and Warner. Jennifer, dressed in a power suit, stood near a projector, her confident facade cracking under the weight of my presence. My evidence, screenshots of weak encryption, firewall gaps, and offshore data transfers, was ready to change everything. Warner nodded at me. "Agent Mitchell, your findings?" she asked, her voice cutting through the room's tension. I took a breath, projecting my screen onto the wall. "Mitchell Defense Solutions system is critically flawed," I began, my voice steady. "The encryption keys are weak, easily breached by a basic attack. The firewall has gaps that could allow hackers to access classified data. Worse, I found a subroutine routing sensitive information to an offshore server in Eastern Europe, tied to payments of $10 million to a shell company, Novex Solutions." The room went silent. Jennifer's face paled, her hands gripping the projector. "That's absurd," she snapped, her voice too loud. "Our system is secure. Agent Mitchell must be mistaken." I met her eyes, unflinching. "The logs don't lie." "Jennifer Mitchell," I said, pulling up the data trail. "You signed off on every update, including the subroutine. Novex was your hire." Warner leaned forward, her expression grim. "These are serious allegations," she said. "If true, they're a breach of national security." Mom jumped in, her voice sharp. "Sarah, how dare you attack your own family?" she said, her words dripping with venom. "This is betrayal, pure and simple. You're tearing down everything we've built." I kept my gaze on Warner, ignoring Mom's jab. "My duty is to the truth," I said. "This system as it stands endangers lives. The Pentagon deserves to know." Warner nodded, her eyes narrowing at Jennifer. "Effective immediately, the contract is on hold pending a full investigation," she declared. Dad's fingers stopped drumming, his jaw tight. Jennifer's eyes darted to him, pleading. Jennifer tried to recover, stepping toward Warner. "Ms. Warner, this is a misunderstanding," she said, her voice trembling. "We can fix any issues. Our team is top tier." Warner cut her off. "You rushed a flawed system to secure this contract," she said, her tone icy. "Agent Mitchell's findings suggest negligence at best, criminal intent at worst." Jennifer flinched, her charm crumbling. Dad finally spoke, his voice low. "We'll address this internally," he said, avoiding my eyes. I shook my head. "This isn't an internal matter," I said. "It's a DIA investigation now." Mom stood, her chair scraping the floor. "You've always been ungrateful," she hissed, pointing at me. "We gave you everything and you repay us with this sabotage." Her words stung, but I held my ground. "I'm not here to sabotage," I said, my voice firm. "I'm here to protect my country. If that means exposing your mistakes, so be it." Warner raised a hand, silencing Mom. "Agent Mitchell is doing her job," she said. "Your company's actions will face scrutiny, not hers." Jennifer slumped into a chair, her face a mask of panic. "We didn't know about the subroutine," she muttered, glancing at Dad. I didn't buy it. The logs showed her approvals, her rushed timelines, her choice of Novex. She wasn't just careless, she was complicit. Dad's silence confirmed my suspicions. He'd known something was off, but let Jennifer run the show. Mom's accusations were a desperate shield for their failure. Warner turned to me. Agent Mitchell, submit your full report to DIA by end of day, she said. We'll take it from here. I nodded, closing my laptop. Yes, ma'am. The room felt heavy, the weight of my family's empire cracking under the truth. Jennifer stared at the table. Dad avoided my gaze, and Mom's glare burned into me. They thought they could intimidate me, but I wasn't their pawn anymore. I'd exposed their lies, and the consequences were coming. As Warner gathered her notes, I slipped the USB drive into my bag. This wasn't over. My family's secrets ran deeper, and tomorrow's showdown would force them to face the full truth. I walked out, my resolve unshaken, ready to finish what I'd started. The boardroom doors closed behind Warner, leaving me alone with Dad, Mom, and Jennifer in the suffocating silence of Mitchell Defense Solutions' Manhattan headquarters. The Monday morning light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished table. My laptop was closed, but the USB drive in my pocket held the truth evidence of Jennifer's reckless system and illegal deals. Dad stood by the window, his back to me, his shoulders tense. Mom sat rigidly, her eyes burning with fury. Jennifer paced near the projector, her confident mask gone, replaced by a nervous twitch. This wasn't just about the contract anymore. It was about the lies they'd all buried. I broke the silence, my voice steady. You knew, I said, looking at Dad. You knew about Jennifer's deals with Novex Solutions, didn't you, Dad? His head snapped around, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't answer. I turned to Mom. And you, Catherine, you covered for her to protect the company. Mom's face twisted, her voice sharp. Don't you dare call me that, she snapped. You're no daughter of ours, throwing accusations to ruin us. Jennifer stopped pacing, her hands clenched. You're out of line, Sarah, she said, her voice shaking. You don't understand how this business works. I stepped closer, my gaze locked on hers. I understand enough, Jennifer Mitchell, I said. You approved a system full of holes, rushed it to win a contract, and funneled millions to a shell company. I have the logs. You weren't just sloppy, you were complicit. Jennifer's face drained of color, her eyes darting to Dad for rescue. Dad finally spoke, his voice low but heavy. Sarah, this isn't your place, he said, still avoiding my eyes. We handle our own problems. I shook my head, my chest tightening. Not when those problems risk lives, Robert, I said, his name cutting through the air. You let Jennifer run this scam, and you did nothing. His jaw clenched, but he stayed silent, his authority crumbling under the weight of my words. Mom stood her chair, scraping loudly. You ungrateful child, she hissed, pointing at me. We built this empire for you, and you tear it down out of spite. Her words hit like a slap, but I held my ground. This isn't spite. Catherine, I said, my voice cold. This is justice. You knew about the offshore transfers and let them happen. You chose profit over integrity. Mom flinched, her hands trembling, but she didn't deny it. The truth was too heavy to dodge. Jennifer tried to interrupt, her voice desperate. We didn't know it was illegal, she said, her eyes wide. Novex was a trusted partner. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, holding it up. Trusted, I said, my tone sharp. You signed off on every payment, every code update. You knew the system was flawed, and you pushed it anyway. Jennifer shrank back, her excuses dissolving. I turned to Dad, my voice softening for a moment. Dad, you could have stopped this. Why didn't you? He looked away, his silence louder than any confession. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their guilt. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but now I saw them clearly, Robert and Catherine, architects of a crumbling legacy, and Jennifer, their chosen heir, drowning in her own ambition. I won't cover for you, I said, my voice firm. The DIA will have my report by tonight, and the truth will come out. Mom's eyes flashed with rage. You'll destroy us, she said. You'll destroy your own family. I shook my head. You destroyed yourselves, I said. I'm just the one holding the mirror. Jennifer sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. You don't get it, she muttered. We had to win that contract. Her voice broke, but I felt no pity. She'd chosen this path and Dad and Mom had paved it for her. Dad finally met my eyes, his face etched with something close to regret. Sarah, he said, his voice barely audible, this wasn't supposed to happen. I nodded, my resolve unshaken. But it did, Robert, I said. And I'm finishing it. I turned to leave the USB drive heavy in my hand. This wasn't the family I'd once fought to belong to. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. The door clicked shut behind me, their voices fading as I walked away, ready to face whatever came next. The truth was out, and no amount of their anger could bury it again. The elevator doors slid open and I stepped into the quiet hallway of Mitchell Defense Solutions' Manhattan headquarters, the weight of yesterday's boardroom showdown still lingering. It was late Monday afternoon, and the USB drive in my pocket held the final report I'd prepared for the DIA, every damning detail of Jennifer's flawed system and illegal deals with Novex Solutions. I was headed to my car when I heard her voice behind me. Sarah, wait. Jennifer called, her heels clicking against the marble floor. I turned, my expression guarded. She stood there. Her power suit wrinkled, her eyes red-rimmed, no trace of the confident sister who'd humiliated me at the party. Jennifer, I said, my voice steady but cold. What do you want? She hesitated, her hands twisting together. Can we talk? Just us. She asked, her tone softer than I'd ever heard. I glanced at my watch. The DIA was expecting my report by midnight, but I nodded. 5 minutes, I said, leading her to a nearby conference room. The door clicked shut, sealing us in with years of unspoken resentment. Jennifer sat across from me, her shoulders slumped. I messed up, Sarah, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I leaned back, arms crossed, waiting. She took a shaky breath. I've always been jealous of you, she admitted, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. You're brilliant, Sarah. You could have run this company better than me, but you walked away. You chose your own path, and I hated you for it. Her words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my face neutral. Jealous, I said, my tone sharp. You had everything, Mom and Dad's approval, the company, the spotlight. You didn't need to cut corners with Novex. Jennifer flinched, her hands gripping the table. I thought I could handle it, she said. The contract was our chance to prove ourselves, but the pressure. I panicked. Novex promised quick fixes and I trusted them. Her voice cracked, and for a moment I saw the sister I'd grown up with, not Jennifer Mitchell, the ambitious heir. I shook my head. You didn't just trust them, I said. You signed off on a system you knew was flawed. You sent classified data to an offshore server. That's not a mistake. It's a crime. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but I felt no urge to comfort her. I didn't know it was illegal, she said, her voice desperate. I just wanted to win. I leaned forward, my gaze steady. You wanted to win at any cost, I said. And now the DIA is coming for answers. Jennifer wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. You don't know what it's like, she said. Living under their expectations, always being compared to you even after you left. I clenched my jaw, her words stirring old wounds. I know exactly what it's like, I said. But I didn't sell out my country to prove myself. She looked away, her shoulders shaking, and for a moment silence hung between us. I stood, pulling the USB drive from my pocket. This report goes to the DIA tonight, I said. It details every flaw, every payment to Novex, every choice you made, Jennifer Mitchell. The investigation starts now. Jennifer's head snapped up, her eyes wide. You're really going through with it? She asked, her voice breaking. I nodded. It's my job, I said. And it's the right thing to do. I turned to leave, but Jennifer grabbed my arm. Sarah, please, she said, her voice raw. Can't you give us a chance to fix this? I pulled away, my resolve firm. You had your chance, I said. You chose ambition over integrity. I walked out, leaving her in the empty room, her sobs echoing behind me. Back in my car, I plugged the USB drive into my laptop and uploaded the report to the DIA's secure server. The file transfer completed with a soft beep, sealing Mitchell Defense Solutions' fate. I leaned back, staring at the city skyline as the weight of my decision settled. Jennifer's confession didn't change the truth: she'd betrayed her country and I'd done my duty. The investigation would unravel the rest, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I sat in my car outside the DIA's New York field office, the city skyline fading into the Tuesday morning haze. The report I'd submitted last night was already making waves. Mitchell Defense Solutions was under full DIA investigation, and the truth about Jennifer's deals with Novex Solutions was unraveling. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Agent Mitchell, meet me at the office. Urgent. Rebecca Hayes, DIA intern. I slipped the phone into my pocket, my mind racing. The past 3 days had stripped away any lingering hope of salvaging my family ties. Robert, Catherine, and Jennifer had made their choices, and I'd made mine. I walked into the DIA office, my badge clipped to my jacket, and found Rebecca Hayes waiting in the lobby. She was young, barely 22, her brown hair tied back, her intern badge gleaming. Agent Mitchell, she said, her voice eager but professional. Thank you for coming. I nodded, following her to a small meeting room. What's this about, Rebecca? I asked, my tone calm but curious. She handed me a folder, her eyes bright. The director reviewed your report, she said. It's airtight. The investigation's moving fast, and they want you for a new role: senior advisor on defense contracts. I opened the folder, scanning the offer letter. The position was a step up, a chance to shape policy and prevent disasters like the one Jennifer Mitchell had caused. My heart steadied, a sense of purpose settling in. This is unexpected, I said, meeting Rebecca's gaze. She smiled. You earned it, she said. Your work exposed a major breach. The director trusts you to keep contractors honest. I nodded, signing the acceptance form. Tell the director I'm in, I said. Rebecca beamed, taking the folder. You won't regret this. Agent Mitchell, she said, heading out. Alone in the room, I leaned back, my thoughts drifting to Robert, Catherine, and Jennifer. I'd spent years chasing their approval, enduring their dismissal, their betrayal. Robert had let Jennifer's ambition run unchecked, Catherine had shielded her, and Jennifer had gambled with national security. Cutting them out wasn't easy, but it was necessary. They weren't my family anymore, not in the way that mattered. I'd chosen my path, one built on truth, not their lies. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from the DIA confirming the investigation's scope. Jennifer Mitchell's name was listed alongside Novex Solutions with charges pending. Robert and Catherine weren't named yet, but their roles would come to light. I closed the email, feeling no satisfaction, only resolve. The truth had a way of breaking things apart, but it also cleared the way for something better. I stepped outside the city's hum, a quiet backdrop to my thoughts. I'd walked away from Mitchell Defense Solutions 8 years ago, choosing my own life over their empire. That choice had led me here, free, unbroken, and stronger than they'd ever expected. I wasn't just Agent Mitchell. I was Sarah, standing for what was right, no matter the cost. To anyone watching, I'd say this: living true to yourself and standing for justice outweighs toxic family ties. Blood doesn't bind you to people who tear you down. It's hard to let go, but when you do, you find your own strength. I did, and I'm not looking back. Thank you for following my story. If it hit home, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic ties to stand up for what's right? Let's talk about it. Your stories keep this channel alive, so share them and let's keep rising above together.
My name is Lena Torres. I'm 28 years old, and if you asked anyone to describe me, they'd probably say steady. I've always been the reliable one, the friend who shows up early, the coworker who fixes the printer without being asked, the daughter who pays her bills on time and never forgets birthdays. I work IT support at a mid-sized company in the city. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and for someone like me, stability has always felt like safety. What I didn't realize back then was that my craving for stability would blind me to how much I was sacrificing for someone who didn't value it or me. I met Daniel 2 years ago through mutual friends. He was 25 at the time, full of restless energy, quick to laugh, always holding his phone like it was an extension of his hand. Daniel wasn't just living in the digital age. He was building a career out of it. He wanted to be a full-time influencer. Back then, he had maybe 50,000 followers on TikTok posting comedy skits and lifestyle clips. When he introduced himself, he grinned and said, "I'm going to be famous one day. You'll see." I should have heard the warning in his words, but all I saw was his ambition, the light in his eyes. It was intoxicating. I fell hard. From the start, our relationship tilted in his favor. Daniel was charming, yes, but also broke, bouncing between part-time jobs, scraping together enough to cover half the rent while he invested in content. I told myself I didn't mind. I made more money, and I believed in him. So I covered the gaps, the rent. He couldn't pay the groceries. He couldn't afford even the expensive camera and ring light he needed to take his videos to the next level. I paid for it all out of my savings. At night, after long shifts staring at code and troubleshooting servers, I would sit beside him on our worn-out couch, editing his videos while he scrolled endlessly for inspiration. I'd suggest captions, trim clips, adjust audio. Sometimes I even stayed up past midnight, my eyes stinging, just so he could post something by his self-imposed deadline. When my company offered me a promotion that required relocating, Daniel looked at me with panic in his eyes. "I can't move right now, Lena. My network's here. My growth is here." So I turned the offer down. I told myself it was love, that love means compromise, and when he pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You're my rock, Lena. I don't know what I'd do without you." I believed him. I believed we were building something together. But over time, the balance shifted. Daniel's account grew steadily. He crossed 100,000 followers, then 200,000. Suddenly, he was being invited to influencer events, rubbing shoulders with other creators who looked like they stepped out of magazines. That's when the comparison started. He'd scroll through his feed, showing me videos of shirtless men with sculpted abs flashing their luxury watches and perfect smiles. "Look at how he engages his audience," Daniel would say. "That's the kind of energy people love." It sounded like business talk, but it stung, because what he really meant was, "Why can't you be like them?" I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't hurt, telling myself it was just his work brain talking. But inside I felt smaller each time. I wasn't glamorous. I wasn't flashy. I was just me. And maybe, just maybe, me wasn't enough anymore. The late nights started after that. At first, Daniel claimed it was all networking. He'd come home past midnight, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't his eyes glassy from champagne. When I asked how it went, he'd say, "It's just business, babe. You wouldn't understand. It's all about engagement." But his posts started changing too. They were flirtier, more suggestive. Videos with captions like, "Who wants to wake up to this?" His followers loved it. Strangers flooded his comments with heart emojis and fire symbols. I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything, that he still came home to me. But then I caught him DMing a bigger influencer, a girl named Maya with triple his following. The messages weren't explicit, but the late-night timestamps and the trail of red hearts told me everything I needed to know. When I confronted him, he smirked, brushing it off. "She's just a collab partner. Don't be so insecure, Lena. This is the job." The words lodged in my chest like splinters. Insecure, sensitive, overthinking. I began to wonder if that was all I was in his eyes, a safe harbor while he chased storms elsewhere. And yet I stayed. Because love isn't rational, and because every once in a while he'd still look at me like he used to, like I was the one person who believed in him when no one else did. But late at night, lying awake while he typed furiously on his phone, I started asking myself questions I'd never dared to voice. What if all my sacrifices weren't building a future but feeding a machine that would eventually spit me out? What if Daniel didn't really need me at all except as the quiet background character in his highlight reel? The thought chilled me, but I pushed it down, convincing myself tomorrow would be better. It wasn't. One evening, while Daniel scrolled through his comments, laughing at some joke his followers had made, I caught a glimpse of his screen. The caption on one of his draft videos read, "Imagine waking up to this every day." The clip hadn't posted yet. It was of me sleeping. My stomach nodded, but I didn't say anything. I told myself it was harmless. Just a silly draft. Maybe he'd delete it. I couldn't have known that draft was the crack in the dam. The water hadn't rushed through yet, but it was coming. And when it did, it would drown everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the cost of sacrifice. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I woke up to my phone buzzing uncontrollably, like it was trying to escape my nightstand. At first, I thought it was some system outage at work, a server going haywire, but when I reached for it, the notifications weren't from the office. They were from friends, from coworkers, from numbers I hadn't seen in years. Lena, are you okay, girl? I'm so sorry you had to see that. Is this real? He really did that. My chest tightened as I fumbled to open TikTok. I barely used the app, only followed Daniel to keep up with his content. But the moment I logged in, the truth stared me in the face. There it was, a video he'd posted the night before, already at 500,000 views. It was me, asleep on the couch, my hair wild, my mouth slightly open in the kind of way no one wants, immortalized on the internet. He'd added goofy filters, a cartoon drool effect sliding down my chin, clown music echoing in the background. The caption read, "Imagine waking up to this every day. Hashtag relationship goals. Hash real life. Hashtag girlfriend fails." The comments were merciless. "Bro, how do you sleep next to that and not run? She looks like a tired mom of 4. Upgrade time king. Girls giving NPC energy while he's main character." I felt my stomach drop like I'd been shoved off a cliff. My face burned, not from shame alone, but from betrayal. This wasn't a private joke. This wasn't something shared between lovers. He had turned me into content. I sat frozen on the couch, phone trembling in my hands. Memories of the past 2 years flashed in fragments, me staying up late, editing his videos, me covering his rent, me shelving my promotion for his dreams. All of it, and this was the thanks I got reduced to a punchline for strangers to laugh at. The unfairness clawed at my throat until I thought I might choke on it. When the door opened around noon, Daniel breezed in like he had won the lottery. His phone was in his hand, his grin wide. "Babe, the video's blowing up. We hit 1.2 million this morning. Can you believe it?" I looked at him, disbelief written all over my face. My voice came out low, almost foreign to me. "Daniel, that's me, sleeping. You posted that without asking. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" He blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Lena. Don't be so dramatic. It's funny. My followers love the realness. This is the kind of stuff that goes viral." I set my phone on the coffee table carefully, as if it were glass about to shatter. "Funny to you, maybe. But people are mocking me in the comments. They're calling me a loser, saying you should upgrade. Do you understand what you've done?" He rolled his eyes, the grin fading into irritation. "You're being way too sensitive. This is my career. You knew what you were signing up for when we started dating. Engagement is everything." That word engagement hit me like a slap. Not love, not respect, not partnership. Engagement. I felt my chest tighten as the truth settled in. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was material. "What about respect?" I asked softly. "What about us? Doesn't that matter more than likes?" Daniel snorted, tossing his phone onto the couch. "You just don't get it. Jake thought it was genius. He said this kind of content gets collabs." My head snapped up. "Jake." He hesitated for half a second too long, then shrugged. "Yeah, we've been talking. He gets it. He understands the grind, unlike you." There it was, the confirmation of every late-night suspicion, every red heart in his DMs. My ears rang, my heart raced, but I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just sat there staring at him as the weight of 2 years pressed down on my shoulders. Daniel kept talking, his voice rising, hands gesturing like he was pitching a brand deal instead of justifying betrayal. "You're safe, Lena. Predictable. But I need someone who matches my energy. You. You drag it down. I need excitement, not routine." Each word was a nail sealing the coffin of what we once had. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears that threatened to betray me in front of him. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in, his words echoing louder than they should. Safe, predictable, dragging him down. That was what I was to him now. Flashbacks rushed in uninvited. Daniel clinging to me in the early days, whispering, "You're my rock." His hand on mine when I bought him his first real camera, promising we were in this together. The nights I fell asleep, waiting for him to come home, telling myself it was worth it. And now this me reduced to a punchline while he confessed another woman matched his energy. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to keep my voice steady even as my insides twisted. "Daniel, I said each word deliberate. You just told the whole world I'm nothing but a joke. And now you're telling me I'm holding you back. Do you hear yourself? But he only smirked, leaning back, like he was already the star of some new storyline. You'll never understand this world, Lena. Maybe you're just not cut out for it. His words were meant to break me, but instead something inside me snapped into place. Not broken, clarified. I realized then that I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to keep being his editor, his sponsor, his safety net, his punchline. He thought he had the power because his video was going viral, but what he didn't understand was that every view, every cruel comment wasn't just exposing me. It was exposing him. I stood the air heavy with silence. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to yell, to cry, to beg him not to leave for Maya, but I didn't give him that satisfaction. I'm not cut out for your world, I said quietly, and thank God for that. Then I turned and walked into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. He didn't know it, but that was the first step toward the end. Because betrayal like his doesn't fade, it calcifies. And once it hardens, love has nowhere left to live. That night I didn't sleep. Daniel snored beside me, oblivious, his phone still glowing faintly on the nightstand with unread comments flooding in. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the old air conditioner. The anger had burned itself out hours earlier, leaving behind something colder, a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I replayed his words again and again. Safe, predictable, holding him back. The man who once told me I was his rock had turned my loyalty into a punchline, my sacrifices into dead weight. And for the first time I wondered, had I mistaken his dependency for love? At dawn, I slipped out of bed quietly. The apartment was silent, except for the occasional buzz of his phone. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter, letting the weight of my decisions settle over me. I wasn't going to fight for him. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. Because if he could humiliate me for likes, compare me to strangers online, and talk about another woman as if she were an upgrade, then the version of Daniel I fell for no longer existed. He had already left me in every way that mattered. All that was left for me to do was make it official. I opened the closet and pulled out my old suitcase. The wheels squeaked as I dragged it across the hardwood floor. Every sound seemed louder than it should have been. The faint scrape of the zipper, the soft thump of folded clothes hitting the bottom of the bag. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if I had all the time in the world. Because this wasn't running away. This was reclaiming my dignity. I packed only what was mine. Clothes, my laptop, a box of keepsakes my grandmother had given me. I left behind the ring light, the tripods, the camera I'd bought with my savings. Those belonged to Daniel now. They could keep him company when the followers stopped cheering. Each item I placed in my bag felt like proof that I still existed outside of him. That Lena Torres wasn't just the background character in someone else's viral story. As I zipped the suitcase shut, I noticed my reflection in the bedroom mirror. My eyes were swollen from a night without sleep, but beneath the fatigue, I saw something sharper, stronger. Resolve. For months, I'd been gaslit into believing I was too sensitive, too insecure, too ordinary. But the woman staring back at me looked anything but weak. She looked done. Before leaving, I sat at the small desk in the corner of the room. I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote just 2 sentences. I deserve better than being your punchline. Goodbye. I placed the note on his pillow, right where he'd see it the moment he woke up. There would be no screaming match, no tearful confrontation, no last-minute pleas, just silence and finality. Because the loudest statement I could make wasn't with words, it was with absence. When Daniel stirred in the bathroom humming some mindless tune as the shower ran, I rolled my suitcase to the door. My heart pounded, but my face remained calm. I took one last look at the apartment, the clutter of ring lights, the empty energy drink cans, the faint scent of cologne and ambition. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage set, one I'd been forced to play a supporting role on. I placed my hand on the doorknob, inhaled deeply, and walked out without a sound. The city air hit me like a baptism. Cool, sharp, almost cleansing. I pulled my suitcase behind me, the wheels clattering on the uneven pavement. With every step, the weight on my chest loosened, even if just slightly. I didn't know exactly where I was going. A friend had offered me her couch if I ever needed it, and right now, that was enough. What mattered most was that I was moving forward, out of his apartment, out of his shadow, out of the prison of waiting for someone who never valued me. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a message. "Daniel, where are you? What's with the bags? This is insane. Over a video. Seriously." I didn't reply. Another message followed. "Daniel, You're being dramatic. I didn't cheat. Jake and I are just friends. You're twisting things. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. No anger, no longing. Just confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Because even in my absence, he was still minimizing, still deflecting, still making me the problem. By evening, the tone of his text shifted. Daniel, you'll regret this. No one else is going to put up with your boring routine like I did. You're lucky I stayed as long as I did. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. He really believed he was the prize. I blocked his number, slid my phone into my pocket, and looked out at the glowing skyline. For the first time in months, maybe years, the silence felt like peace instead of punishment. That night, lying on a friend's couch, I allowed myself to grieve not for him, but for the version of myself I'd lost in the relationship. The woman who thought love meant sacrifice, who believed stability meant silence, who confused loyalty with invisibility. I whispered to the dark room more to myself than anyone else, never again. Because betrayal has a way of reshaping you. It burns, it scars, but it also forges something new in its wake. And I could feel it already, the beginning of someone stronger, sharper, unwilling to settle for being anyone's content ever again. Daniel thought the story ended with his viral video, but he was wrong. That was only the beginning of my story. The first few weeks after I left were brutal. I had escaped the apartment, but I couldn't escape the humiliation overnight. My face, the one Daniel had mocked with drool filters and clown music, had already been etched into the internet. Even at work, I caught glimpses of coworkers' pitying glances. They never said anything outright, but the way conversations fell silent when I walked into the break room said enough. At night, on my friend Marisol's couch, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replaying his words, safe, predictable, dragging him down. The unfairness of it twisted in my gut. I had given up so much, my savings, my career advancement, my time, and he had discarded me for likes. But slowly the silence began to heal me. I found a small studio apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't much, just one room with peeling paint and a kitchen sink that dripped no matter how tightly you turned the knob. But it was mine. No ring lights cluttering the space. No echoes of Daniel's voice rehearsing punchlines. Just quiet. Work became my anchor. With no late nights spent editing Daniel's videos, I had time to pour myself into projects. I took on extra assignments, polished my presentations, stayed late because I wanted to, not because I was waiting for someone to come home from a networking event. And in a twist of irony, the same week Daniel's video hit 5 million views, my boss called me into his office. "Lena," he said, tapping a folder on his desk, "you've really stepped up these past few months. We'd like to offer you a raise and more flexibility to work remotely." I smiled, not because of the money, though, that helped, but because it felt like the universe was whispering, "See, you were holding yourself back too." I built small rituals that became lifelines. Morning gym sessions where I blasted podcasts about self-growth instead of Daniel's endless playlist of trending TikTok sounds. Long hikes on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do, but Daniel had once dismissed as boring nature stuff. I remembered the last time I'd tried to plan a hike with him. He bailed last minute for a spontaneous collab with Maya. I went alone that day, feeling the sting of being second choice. Now, hiking alone didn't feel like rejection. It felt like freedom. Meanwhile, karma had begun to creep into Daniel's world. I didn't go looking for updates. I had blocked him everywhere. But the internet has a way of delivering news whether you want it or not. Friends sent me screenshots. My phone buzzed with whispers. At first, his video brought him exactly what he wanted: attention. Brands reached out. His follower count climbed. But then the tide shifted. People began pointing out the cruelty. Why humiliate your girlfriend for clout? This is just bullying dressed up as content. Unfollow. Toxic energy. The hashtags started small. Hashtag respect your partner. Chad, toxic boyfriend. But within weeks, they spread like wildfire. Sponsors backed out, unwilling to associate with someone branded abusive. His follower growth stalled, then plummeted. The same strangers who had once cheered him on were now dragging him mercilessly. And then came the twist I hadn't expected. Daniel went public with Maya. Not in a flashy announcement, but in a series of subtle posts, a hand in his stories that wasn't his, a shadowy second figure in his videos. Soon, everyone pieced it together. But from what I heard, the romance wasn't the fantasy he thought it would be. Maya wasn't a muse. She was a mirror. She played the same game he did, using people for clout, discarding them when they no longer served her brand. At first, they were a golden couple collaborating on videos that drew in millions of views, but the cracks showed quickly. Daniel began appearing more controlling on camera, cutting Maya off mid-sentence, criticizing her ideas. And one night, during a live stream glitch, viewers heard it, his raised voice, sharp and cruel. "You're nothing without me," he snapped, unaware the mic was still hot. Clips of the outburst spread within hours. Daniel's carefully constructed image of funny, relatable boyfriend crumbled. Now he was the villain, his face attached to threads titled, "The Downfall of a Toxic Influencer." I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. But when I read those headlines, something inside me loosened. It wasn't schadenfreude exactly, it was justice. The world finally saw what I had lived through. Months passed. I rebuilt piece by piece. Therapy sessions helped me unpack the manipulation the way Daniel had chipped away at my confidence. "You're not the punchline," my therapist told me once. "You never were." Those words stayed with me. One afternoon at a work conference, I met Ethan. He was in marketing, soft-spoken, steady, with a dry humor that caught me off guard. We struck up a conversation over burnt coffee and stale bagels, and before I knew it, we were talking like old friends. When I told him about my weekend hikes, he grinned. Finally, someone else who likes trees more than ring lights. It was simple, effortless. No flashy captions, no comparisons, just connection. A few weeks later, he said something that nearly broke me, not because it hurt, but because it healed. "You're steady in the best way, Lena." The words Daniel once weaponized against me, Ethan turned into a gift. And still Daniel's spiral continued. Mutual friends whispered that Maya had ditched him after his outburst went viral. Sponsors had dried up completely. He was posting desperate Q&As, begging followers for engagement, but the numbers kept dropping. His once polished image cracked further with each video, his hair unkempt, his jokes falling flat. I watched from a distance, not with glee, but with detachment. Because karma was already doing the work. One evening, hiking boots muddy and phone buzzing with Ethan's goodnight text, I realized something profound. For so long I had thought Daniel's betrayal defined me. That video, those comments, his cruel words. But watching him unravel while I quietly rebuilt, I finally saw the truth. The betrayal didn't define me. My response did. And I chose to rise. It started with a text. 2 months had passed since I left and I hadn't heard from Daniel. I'd blocked him, muted him, erased him from my feeds. But one night, just past midnight, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Daniel, hey Lena, I miss you. That video was dumb. I deleted it. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, heart. Steady fingers unmoving. A year ago, those words would have gutted me. Now they felt empty, like echoes bouncing off walls I no longer lived inside. I didn't reply. The next day, another message. This time a voicemail. His voice was softer, cracked around the edges. "Babe, things with Maya fell apart. She was awful. Not like you. I see now how good we had it. Call me, please." I let the message play in silence, then hit delete. The trickle became a flood. Texts stacked one after another, his tone swinging wildly between remorse and desperation. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I was chasing the wrong things. You were always there for me. Daniel. Please, I need help. Rent's due. Sponsors bailed. You know how hard this is. Daniel, don't punish me forever. We had something real. I know you feel it too." Each message confirmed what I already knew. He didn't want me. He wanted the stability I had always given him, the safety net he'd scorned until it vanished. Then came the pressure from his family. First, a group text from his sister. "Sister Lena, you're being cruel. Daniel made a mistake, but he's suffering. Talk to him. He deserves another chance." Then a call from his mother, her voice stern, almost commanding. "Family sticks together, Lena. He's learned his lesson. That video was just a joke. You're overreacting. Come back, fix this. He needs you." I closed my eyes, biting back the bitter laugh clawing its way up my throat. Family sticks together. Where was that wisdom when Daniel humiliated me in front of millions? "Mrs. Alvarez," I said evenly with respect. Daniel chose his path. He dismissed me, mocked me publicly. I'm not responsible for his consequences. Her voice turned cold. "You're selfish. He made you part of his world, and you abandon him the moment things get hard." For once, I didn't flinch. "No," I said quietly. "I left the moment he made me a joke." And I hung up. The final straw came one rainy evening. I was home from work, curled up on the couch with a book, when a knock rattled my door. I froze. Few people knew my new address. When I peered through the peephole, my stomach clenched. Daniel. He stood there, hair damp from the drizzle clothes, wrinkled eyes hollowed out. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the bright, ambitious influencer had been stripped away, leaving only a boy who didn't know how to exist without applause. I opened the door just enough to block his way. "What do you want, Daniel?" His voice cracked, his hands fidgeting. "I messed up, Lena. I know I did. Maya, she used me, took my money, and left. My followers hate me. The comments are brutal. But you," he swallowed hard, "you were safe, reliable. I realize now I threw that away." His words might have once felt like balm. Now they landed like insults wrapped in apologies. Safe, reliable, the same things he had mocked me for before. "That's on you," I said flatly. "You chose excitement over respect. You called me a distraction, remember." He stepped closer, his voice rising, desperation twisting into anger. "I was wrong. I see it now. Influencer life is fake. You're the only real thing I ever had. Please, Lena, take me back. I'll change. No more videos about us. No more jokes." For a moment, pity tugged at me. His face was drawn, his shoulders slumped, his bravado gone. But then I remembered the sting of humiliation, the way he laughed as millions mocked me. I shook my head. "I don't believe you. And even if I did, it wouldn't matter. Some things can't be undone." His expression hardened, his tone shifted sharp with the cruelty I knew too well. "How dare you ignore me like this? After everything I did for us, you're acting like a child." Something in me snapped, not with rage, but with clarity. "Everything you did," I asked, voice calm but cutting. "Daniel, you humiliated me for likes. You compared me to strangers. You cheated me out of respect. Don't rewrite history to make yourself the victim." His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just silence, heavy and bitter. I stepped back, hand on the door. "Goodbye, Daniel." And I shut it firmly. He banged once hard, his voice muffled through the door. "You'll regret this. Lena, don't think you're better than me." But his words had no power anymore. I leaned against the door, exhaling slowly, my heart steady. For the first time, I realized the power had shifted. He no longer had the ability to define me, diminish me, or drag me down. The attempts didn't stop there. A week later, his sister sent another message, pathetic Lena. "You're punishing him for growing his brand. You were never good enough anyway." Funny, I remembered almost the exact same words falling from Daniel's lips. I blocked her too. Then his mother left a voicemail voice dripping with disdain. "He'll find someone better. Don't come crawling back when you realize you've made a mistake." I didn't bother replying. Because what they couldn't understand was simple. I wasn't crawling anywhere. I was standing taller than I ever had before. That night, as I curled back onto my couch, rain pattering against the windows, I felt the weight of finality settle over me. Daniel was unraveling, desperate to drag me back into his chaos. But I had chosen peace. And no amount of knocking, pleading, or pressure could pull me back into the storm. The invitation came from a mutual friend, Marisol, the one who'd let me crash on her couch when I first left Daniel. She was throwing a birthday party, and I hesitated at first. Mutual friends meant mutual risks. Daniel might show up. But then I thought about the months I'd spent hiding, shrinking myself to avoid him, and realized I was done living in fear of running into a ghost. This wasn't his circle anymore. It was mine. So I said yes. And this time I wouldn't be walking in alone. The night of the party, I arrived with Ethan by my side. He wasn't flashy, no designer sneakers, no ring lights in his trunk. Just a steady, kind presence that grounded me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. When Marisol hugged me at the door, whispering, "I'm so glad you came," I felt a quiet pride. Months ago, I had left Daniel's world in silence, suitcase dragging behind me. Tonight, I was stepping fully into my own. The room buzzed with laughter music and clinking glasses. People mingled in corners, catching up, sharing stories. I felt Ethan's hand find mine, a simple gesture, but it meant everything. For once, I wasn't bracing for humiliation. I was simply there. Of course, the peace didn't last. Halfway through the evening, the air shifted. Conversations dipped. Heads turned. And when I followed their gaze, I saw him. Daniel. He hadn't been invited of that, I was sure, but there he was, slipping in behind a group at the door, eyes scanning the crowd. He looked different. Smaller. His hair unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, like he'd pulled them from a pile on the floor. The glow he used to carry the false confidence of likes and brand deals was gone. He spotted me instantly, and like a moth to flame, he moved. "Lena," he said, voice low, urgent, when he reached me. "We need to talk. Privately." I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. "No," I said firmly. "Say it here or not at all." His eyes darted nervously around the room. People were watching. He hated that. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Please, I see now. You were the best thing I had. Maya destroyed me. I'm in therapy trying to rebuild. Let's start over. I promise no more online drama. Just us. The desperation in his tone might have once softened me, but not tonight. Tonight I wasn't the girl begging for scraps of respect. I was the woman who had walked away. Before I could answer, Ethan returned from the kitchen, 2 drinks in hand. He slid one toward me with a smile, his presence effortless, steady. Daniel's eyes widened, the realization hitting him like a blow. He looked between us, the man beside me, the calm in my smile, the ease in my posture. And I could see it written all over his face he had lost. I turned to Daniel, my voice steady, clear enough for anyone nearby to hear. Daniel, that chapter is closed. You mocked me for being safe and predictable. But Ethan, he sees it as strength. He values what you threw away. You don't get to rewrite the story now that your brand collapsed. His face flushed red. You think you're better than me now, with him? I didn't flinch. No, Daniel. I just know my worth now, and it has nothing to do with you. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of music in the background. People nearby exchanged glances, some whispered. Everyone could see it. The influencer who once turned me into a joke was now the one exposed, standing in tatters while I stood tall. Daniel muttered something under his breath. Anger, maybe shame, before storming toward the door. No grand exit, no applause. Just the sound of him slipping out, irrelevant and forgotten. Later, as the party carried on, Ethan leaned close. You okay? I smiled, truly smiled, in a way I hadn't in a long time. I'm more than okay. Because closure didn't come from revenge. It didn't come from watching him fall, though karma had taken care of that. Closure came from realizing I no longer needed his validation or his apologies. On the ride home, Ethan laced his fingers with mine. The city lights flickered past, and I thought about everything I'd endured. The betrayal, the humiliation, the silence, the rebuilding. For so long, I thought Daniel's video defined me, that the internet's laughter would follow me forever. But sitting there hand in hand with someone who valued me without conditions, I realized the truth. That viral video didn't end me. It freed me. When we reached my apartment, I leaned against the doorway for a moment, listening to the quiet. Months ago, silence had felt like punishment. Tonight, it felt like peace. I whispered to myself, not as a vow this time, but as a truth already lived. Never again. Because I was no one's punchline. I was Lena Torres. And my story had only just begun.